Now then, people, good evening and welcome back to the Just Joe football show. Of course, it's the international break, so it's time for something a little bit different. Tonight's guest, you will all know him, of course. He's been in the Leeds United content creation sphere for quite some time. I've done quizzes with him. He was regular on, was it the Bielsa Bible, Mickey?
That's right, yeah. The Bielsa Bible, me and Robert Holland, yeah.
Yeah, which was a classic, and you did obviously the song with Lewis. You've been everywhere, mate. You've been everywhere. But we're here tonight to obviously talk about your book and the state of football as it stands now. Leeds United on the cusp of promotion to the Premier League. And what does that look like? It's interesting because I was speaking to a Leicester fan yesterday, and they were saying, like, the journey's so much better than the destination because you can just see how far away they are. And I was saying, Mickey, that it's almost like there's a top 17 in the Prem and a 9, the top 6 in the Championship and the bottom 3, and they might just go like this for the rest of days because they've got too much money and they're too far away. But, of course, you'll know much more about it than me. So, Mickey, I'm going to hand over to you and let's have a chat about it.
Well, that's quite a good place to start, if I'm honest. The idea that it's a top 17 and a bottom 3, which is pretty much right at the minute, but it's not a top 17 either, because of the monopolization process, which I'll talk about and where it ends up, because no one's asking about where this timeline is going. No one's thinking about the bigger picture, and that's what the book does. And I want to show you some stats now, but it's not a top 17, and it never has been. It's always been when the Premier League was, and we'll go back to this Leeds going up thing and this Leicester thing. But, the Premier League started in 92, 93, and £61 million went up into that division, but it's never been shared equally. Most of the money's gone up to the top 5 as it was then, or the top 6 now. And in this format for football, the more you win, the more money you get. So it just keeps going like this, and the top keep rising away constantly. Now, sometimes they fail, like Spurs have failed, and like Man United have obviously failed, but they don't fail for long. There's no way that you can just keep spending that much money. And I'm going to talk about how this football process mirrors the wider world, the stock exchange, basically. But it's constantly going like this. The top are constantly moving away from the rest of the Premier League all the time. You get the odd blip, Forest, Leicester themselves, Wolves, you might remember. And it's important to think about what happened to Leicester and what happened to Wolves when you're thinking about Forest right now. But you've also got this gap as well with the Championship of the Premier League. It's constantly going like that all the time. And now you've got the top of the Championship. They can't make the jump back. Yeah. It's too far. So what you've got now is what goes up must come down. And you look at Ipswich. I didn't realise this actually, but because it's hard to know how much they're spending because it's all quite opaque. You don't really know the wage bills until a few seasons afterwards when clubs post their accounts, So you're always a few seasons behind, but there's rumour mill and stuff. Apparently, Ipswich are the biggest spenders in the Premier League, spent over 100 million, but it's just not enough. There's no way you can make up the gap. And Ipswich have had there's great players. Like Delap is such a good player. Yeah, to get a striker of that quality in your team when you're A, in the Championship, and then B, actually in the Premier League, he's going to go up because there is no way that any decent player is going to stay in the lower echelons of the Premier League or the upper echelons of the Championship. They all go up. So whoever, they're going to get asset stripped. Every team gets asset stripped every season. That's the way it is. We got asset stripped last year. Yeah. Our 3 best players went, and up it goes. And
well, Mickey, just to cut in, but like with Bournemouth, for example, all I'm hearing at the minute is where's Iriola going next? Which top club is he going to? And then they speak about Semenyo, they speak about Justin Cliver, Kirkez, who's already on his way to Liverpool, the guy at centre back who's going to Real Madrid, and it's like they've had one good season, and already it's like, right, we'll take the manager and we'll take all them players as well, and then where do Bournemouth go from there?
Yeah. don't fly too close to the sun because you'll get your wings clipped. That's how it is now. So there is no hope in the long term of any team kind of breaking into the upper echelons of the Premier League and challenging. Forest have really bucked the trend. One team that's done it is Brighton as well, consistently. If you think about like players are like stocks, you know, like bonds that you buy on the stock market, and you're gambling on the future. They might do well, they might do bad, but you know, human beings aren't stocks. They're not robots. So sometimes it can get injured or they just don't fit in somewhere. It doesn't always work out. But you know, Brighton have often done this. They've bought low and sold high. You know, that they've continued to do that, which is really, really kind of like bucking the trend, but they can't keep doing it. And even if the team, you know, the people that make those decisions, like the staff at Brighton, they'll get taken as well. Everybody, if you ever do well, it goes up into the monopolies, as I call them.
Well, Dan Ashworth didn't he? Dan Ashworth went to Newcastle, then from Newcastle to Manchester United, and then Manchester United have sacked him off. But that's a perfect example.
Yeah, staff and players. You know, these are assets, and they just and with this monopolization process, you get the same thing you get in the wider economy, which is asset price inflation. So you just can't keep up with the spending habits of the big six. That I want to explain actually the stock market strategies. The six that kind of it sounds quite abstract, but I'll explain a couple of them because everyone needs to know where this is going. And if we don't do anything with regards to the Premier League, then we will lose the status that we've got as the best league in the world. We're going to become a domestic backwater league because when the ESL happens, and it is going to happen, it's inevitable. And no one's really thinking about that now because they've thought, oh, we've staved off one kind of ESL attempt. Fan power won out. We can do this again. It's just not the case at all. And I think, in my opinion, that first ESL announcement was faux. They did it on a Word document. It was really badly done. This is how you do it. This is how you normalize something over time. It takes about 10 years, I reckon, because you can look at advertising. Now, advertising was in English football came in 1977 after all teams, Kettering Town lobbied the FA and Bolton Wanderers did too. And there was another team I can't quite recall. But it was 3 or 4 teams lobbied the FA. And in 1977, they allowed sponsorship in for the first time in English football. And there was a lot of resistance to it. But by 1987, so that's 10 years later, every single club had a sponsorship across the shirt. It was completely normalized. It was a weird thing at first, you know, a company name on a, what's that company got to do with football? You know, you might remember like Crown Paint stuff for Liverpool, the early days. But it was normalized within about 10 years. That's the same process they're doing with the ESL. No one was talking about the ESL before 2021, before it was announced. Now everybody's talking about the ESL. It's being normalized, and it's also been normalized up here in our in the collective consciousness by the way that this perpetual dominance of the same teams, it becomes normalized. Like, you know, why should Liverpool be playing Everton? You know, the shit. It's like this will happen, and eventually, as I'll explain in a bit, we will lose our status as the best league in the world because once the ESL comes into being, then every other division becomes secondary. You know, we're in the Championship, but who watches the Championship compared to the Premier League? You watch the highest standard of football. So we're going to lose our clubs, and I will explain this, how this superstructure is going to work and how they won't even be English teams anymore. They'll change the name. But yeah, let's talk about some stats here, right? I've got them, I've got dual screens going here, mate.
Love it, man. Love it. You like me, mate.
Right, what I've done, and these are stats that you will not see anywhere, which is incredible in football because the amount of analysis, the amount of data, and the amount of stats in football, it's overwhelming. This has never been done because nobody's looking at the bigger picture. No, not one single journalist is looking at the bigger picture. This is a huge failure of journalism, and that's what Football the People's Shame does. It looks at the bigger picture. So I'll just show you about the idea that the Premier League, the winners are getting, you know, further and further away from the rest of the pack. So we split the Premier League into 3 decades. Okay, we're in the 4th now, of course. Decade 1, the average amount of points it took to win the Premier League was 80 in that 10-year period. In the second decade of the Premier League, this is where we see that in the first decade, the money's going up, but it hasn't taken too much of an effect. The gears are cranking into place. It's the second decade where you see it really shift. It goes up to 87 points. So it's a significant shift. In the third decade, it goes up to 91. So we've seen an 11-point shift in the average amount that the Premier League winners are winning by more, and they're also winning by more goals as well. Yeah. So there's a definite, that you can see it there when you do a mean average test, a 10-year mean average test. That's what I call this. I take 10 seasons and a mean average everything. And there's always seasons that buck the trend. It's never just a straight line that goes up. The odd season does buck the trend, which kind of gives people the impression that we have got some competitive edge in football, but it's been constantly diminished. Now, Leicester won the league in that third decade. They won it on 81 points. So for whatever reason, in 15-16, the monopolization process faltered. There was a glitch. But it always responds. So this is my point. The monopolies always respond. They always strengthen. Like Arsenal have got no strikers this season. That is not going to happen again. They learn lessons and they take players. It's asset stripping. It's acquisitions. That's what happens. So
just on that as well, Mickey, it's quite interesting you say that because the Championship, and I know we're just going off slightly.
Oh, tangents everywhere here, mate. Yeah, this is ADHD.
It's not normal though. It's not normal for there to be 3 teams to get 90+ points, right?
That's what's going to happen.
Twice before. This season, us, Burnley and Sheffield United are going to end up with 90+ points. So does that become the norm because we're getting all the parachute payments in the Championship?
The answer is yes.
Yeah,
this is the norm. And I've been saying this. I've said that 3 teams will get 90+ points this season. I said it last season, and it's going to happen. Someone's going to finish third on 94 points here.
Yeah.
We won it with Bielsa, I think, on 93. So I think it was 93, low 90s. Someone's finishing third or above that, I think. Unless there's a tail away, it could happen. But
last season, Southampton were just 3 points off 90, so you almost had 4 teams on 90, which is insane.
This is the new normal. I think we've entered, what I'm going to explain to you is I think we've entered a new phase in the monopolization process. Everything is phased. It happens in phases towards the final end state, which is a world Super League structure completely owned by billionaires, and it's mergers and acquisitions and vertical integration. That's the stock market strategies they're going to mirror, and I'll go back to that in a bit. But what you found, I'm going back to when Leicester won it. The monopolies responded in the 7 seasons after that. The average is 95.
Wow.
I mean, Liverpool finished second on 97.
Yeah.
So this is a huge increase. Man United won it on 75 with that Kevin Keegan rant that season.
Really?
You can't imagine a team winning it on 75 now. It's not as competitive as it was. So what I've also done is the mean average of the top 4. So let's have a look at this, looking through the decades. We're starting here in 1981 because that's when you got 3 points for a win. It used to be 2. So in 1981, it comes in 3 points. So first decade, 81 to 90, it's 71 points. That's the mean average of the top 4. Then it goes down to 68 points in 91 to 2000. So it's similar. But like I said, it's that second decade of the Premier League. We start to see the monopolization. It goes up to 78. And then the mean average of the top 4 from 2011 to 2020 is 82 points. So what's happened here is the mean average of the top 4 has now gone above what the Premier League winners used to get in the first decade. What you're seeing here on the mean average, there's always seasons that buck the trend. But I reckon I can be right over a 10-year period. I might be wrong next season after, but I reckon using these stats, I'm going to be right over a 10-year period. But it's all written in the stats. It's written into the economic code. Massive, massive inequality. And it can only lead to one place. What I've also done is, again, no one's ever done this research, but looking from 1900 to 1990, which is 8 decades of football because of the 2 wars, what you've got is the number of different teams making the top 4 over a 10-year season, a 10-year decade.
Yeah.
It never drops below 14. Never. But the average is 15. 15.3 to be precise. But what do we see in the 1990s, it drops to 13. So in the first decade, it goes below 14 for the first time, but not a significant decrease. But then in the second decade of the Premier League, it drops to 7. In the third decade of the Premier League, it repeats it again, 7. We've gone from 15 different teams making the top 4 all the way down to just 7. And this is normalization. We've had 20 years of this now.
Yeah.
It's the same teams winning. The European Super League is also a psychological thing. It's happening in our minds as well. We're normalizing monopolization. That's what's happening. And it's time to wake up. This is just it's not stopped. It's actually accelerating. It's just becoming more and more extreme. So let's look at something, Joe, that is relevant to Leeds United now, because it's the mean average of the relegated teams. We start again in 1981, 3 points for a win. And what we see actually for the first 2 decades, 80s and 90s, the mean average points for the relegated teams is 34. So, and it makes a bit of sense that, because they always said, as a cliche,
the
40 points. Yeah, exactly. So when you look at 34, if you go 5 points up and 5 points down, as a general rule, 40 points should see you right. I mean, West Ham were relegated on 42 one season. So it's not always the case, but usually you'd say 40 points. And then we see that second decade again, just looking at the stats, it goes down to 31 points, 2001 to 2010. So it's not a massive drop, actually. And then it goes to 30 points, 2011 to 2020. So it's gone from 34 to 31 to 30. Not a massive decrease. So when you look at the top 4, it's gone up by 14 points. So what does that tell us? It tells us that those points have come from all across the league. They've come from the middle classes, if you want to call them that, as well as the kind of like the lower classes. But I believe we've now entered a new phase of the monopolization process, going back to that kind of gap, that widening, and you can't make the jump back.
Yeah.
So we've got a new decade, 2021. So we are now in the 4th year of that 10-year stretch. So we've not got too much data. But I believe my interpretation of it is that we have entered a new phase. We've got 3 seasons of data, and the average for relegated teams dropped to 26 points. So there we have it. It's really clear. One of those seasons bucks the trend, and that's Leeds United. So when we got relegated, the average relegated points was somewhere, I think, around 31, 32.
Okay.
So the other 2 seasons is way lower. Now this season is the 4th season. So last 3 seasons, 26 points. This season, they are averaging 0.5 points a game. So the average is going to be 19.
Wow.
If it continues as it is, 19 points. We see 2 teams on 17 and 1 team on 9.
Yeah,
it's not great. We have entered a new phase. You cannot compete. The only way to do it is to do what Forest did and break the rules. And I think if anyone can do it, it's probably Leeds. And the reason for that is that we're massive compared to the other teams that will go up. We are. So if there is a team where we've got Red Bull investment too, so there is a way that we might be able to get the spending power necessary to try and get to 30 points, maybe 32. You look at where Wolves are, would we be able to beat them?
That's I was speaking to this with a Leicester fan. He's like, you look at who's closest to them, and it's Wolves, but then you go, well, they've got Mateus Cunha, and I ignore it. And
he's not there next season, by the way.
No, exactly. Yeah. True.
But they will receive a lot of money for him.
Of course,
and they have been receiving a lot of money in the Premier League, and that squad they've got is significant. Even without Cunha, it is significantly better than any Championship squad. The amount of spending you've got to do to catch up to that Wolves team, who, don't forget, will strengthen. They won't have a player as good as Cunha, but they will have 3 players that are way better than your normal kind of like hybrid Championship Premier League player. So that's where we are now. You're just not going to be able to make it up. So the average, if going by the last 4 years, the average is going to be somewhere around, and this is being kind, 25 points. That's what Leeds United can expect next season. There's no point in sacking Farke. There's no point in doing it because we're going to get battered. They will sack him and he'll be gone before Christmas. But the worst thing you can do really is what we have done in 2 consecutive seasons in the Premier League, which is to sack a manager in February because you've just had the January transfer window.
Yeah.
You know, at least give a manager a vision and to go, right, I want to look at, you know, because managers have got relationships with players and with good players that they come in. So that there's ways they can, you know, that's part of it. You sign a manager for their network as well. So you may as well sack him in December or in mid-December, you know, where it gives him a couple of weeks to bed in, get to know everyone and have his vision for who he can try and rescue, you know, rescue the club from relegation. But it's going to be too far. The jump is going to be too far. That's my opinion. We've only had 3 seasons of data, well, 4. So it's not like I'm looking across the 10 years here, but it's my hunch that, like I said, the gap just keeps widening. So I think that we're going to see a fight back as well from the monopolies. You can't have Nottingham Forest finishing top 4. That's not how it works. So we saw Leicester win the league. We saw a massive, massive bounce back from the monopolies. So I think we'll see that again. We've got, obviously, the 3 teams that go down into the Championship. They're going to get 90-plus points because, their squad is nowhere near Premier League standard. But on the other side of the coin, it's way, way, way above the Championship because the gap now is so big. So the 3 teams that come down get 90-odd points. For some reason, Luton have totally bombed. But we've taken that place because, you know, Red Bull investment, still got parachute payments. And I think going up from the Championship, I'm going to say it's the rule of 2 out of 3. There is no doubt at all that the 3 teams that come down, 2 of them are going to finish top 2. That is just, you could put your house on it. It's going to happen. Ipswich somehow managed through the brilliance of Kieran McKenna, and you know, they had some cracking players in that team, like Delap. I mean, what a signing! Incredible. You know, he's clearly, I think City could have done with him, really. You know, they lost Alvarez. I mean, God knows what's going to happen there. They lost Rodri, and I just don't get what the dominance they've, you know, had over the last decade or so. It's incredible. But you know, it can go wrong. That they are making plans now to ensure that it doesn't go wrong. So are Liverpool, so are Arsenal. So Man United and Spurs. You look at Man United spending, it will go up massively. You can't keep up with them. You look at Forest, they'll get asset stripped if they don't make the Champions League, which I think they will. And I think it's a top 5 now. If I'm
that's right. Yeah, for coefficient. Yeah.
So we see that breakaway group getting bigger. Because once you get into the Champions League, what happens then? Hundreds of millions are coming your way, which allows you to strengthen and dominate. You look at this new UEFA competition. There's the Club World Cup thing.
Yeah, the FIFA
There's
one.
£1 billion. £1 billion. Where's the money going? It's going to the top teams. So what's happening is the monopolization process is even more extreme on the continent. In fact, the only country really where you see genuine competition has historically been England. And, you know, because we've got so many clubs that are so well supported, you know, the lower echelons of the pyramid have traditionally been really well, you know, you're getting 5 figures down in League 2 and stuff. Sometimes in Tier 5, Notts County did that. They had gates of, I think, 10, 11,000 when they had a cup game and they lowered prices. They were in the 5th tier at the time. No other country has that, but we're losing that. You know, we are losing that because the monopolization process with the commercial deals, the glamorization of, you know, of advertising and products being associated with winners and winners being plastered everywhere. You know, sponsorship and advertising playing an increasing amount of bigger roles in our lives. The kids are now looking at these monopolies. They're not looking at the local teams. So we've seen average attendances drop in the lower echelons of English football, which means there's a cultural shift going on. We're becoming the same as other countries, which I think is a real shame.
Yeah.
But, you know, like I said, this European Super League, it's happening even more extreme on the continent. Spain, in particular, Germany, the same teams winning it. Just, you know, it's apart from last season, which was a brilliant season for them, but it's normally the Bayern Munich team that wins it. Italy, it's the same teams, you know, like Salzburg in Austria, PSG in France. It's just the same domineering monopolies that are winning. And I'd like to explain now how I believe this is happening. So,
Okay.
and then
Can I just before you move on, Mickey, just because it's in the forefront of my mind. So, what do you think will happen with City in these charges? Then, do you think they're going to be?
Great question. Fuck all.
Yeah,
they have to get away with it, according to my thesis.
Okay.
The Premier League and City are not against each other. The Premier League are working for City. The Premier League work for exactly the same people that our politicians work for. They work for US private equity and they work for the oil industry. That is literally who they work for. Therefore, this is going to be a sham. What will probably happen, really, in the grand scheme, is fuck all. But there might be some kind of charge, that some kind of small points deduction. There could be some kind of huge fine, which is okay because they can afford it.
Yeah,
they
can afford it. Yeah.
A state. So, or they might just get away with it. Because it kind of feels like an all or nothing to me anyway. You know, there's 115 charges. It's almost like you're guilty, or you're not guilty. Murder. You're getting off. Yeah. It's a murder charge. This, you're either guilty, you're going down, or they're going to get off. And I think it's going to have to be the latter, because, and I'll explain why right now.
Yeah.
What's happened here with the power structure? There's a power struggle going on in football now. A22 were the company that did the European Super League. A22 they're called. This happened outside the remit of UEFA. So suddenly these 12 clubs, 6 from the Premier League and 6 from the continent, signed up to the European Super League. It was a sham, of course. It's done psychologically to normalise the concept, but it scared UEFA. Because what I'm explaining to you in a bit is how this is definitely going to happen. It's inevitable. It's all about economic philosophy. Under the current, which is really abstract, but it's key. If you don't understand economic philosophy, fine. But it's like saying, I don't believe in gravity, so I'm going to jump off this building. It's going to affect you. It's going to affect football, whether you understand it or not. Under the current neoliberal economic theory, Milton Friedman economics, the Super League has to happen, and it is happening. So what's happening is this. These 12 clubs have challenged UEFA essentially and gone, we can do this without you. So UEFA have turned around and thought, right, this is happening with or without us. So what do you think is going to happen? They do it with them. So UEFA, the Premier League, the jostling for position right now, they are going to merge with these 12 clubs. It'll be more like 20 probably, maybe 24, you know. But they are going to merge with the commercial partners. They're going to merge with the broadcasting. Everything will be a huge, huge merger. And I'll explain. I'm going to talk about it now really quickly, how this is happening. So to go back to that City question, they can't do it because if they piss City off, City will go to the other 12 clubs, which will go back to A22. And let's not forget, City is basically Abu Dhabi. It's a very powerful oil state. They hold a lot of power, and they have to appease them. So basically now these clubs are more powerful than the Premier League, and they're more powerful than the UEFA, because they're now, as I said, jostling for position. This European Super League is going to happen. You do it with us or without us. That's what they've said. All they have to do is take their commercial power, their commercial worldwide fan base, go and set up with a single digit in broadcasting service, something like Apple, Netflix, you know, that kind of streaming service, and stream their European Super League to the rest of the world. And the rest of the world will buy into it, and goodbye UEFA, or, you know, there's a new setup happening.
I was doing a stream yesterday, Friday, on the England game, and you know, like the Champions League's now changed to a league format, hasn't it? And someone actually suggested, do you know what, we should do the Nations League like this? It would make it more exciting. So when that becomes the norm, more people are like, well, we get that. So then we're already getting it, aren't we, really, through the Champions League? But it's...
It happens incrementally. It's been happening incrementally for a very, very long time. The goalposts shift slowly. And after time, you're looking at a completely different landscape. And you're totally right. This season is the first season that the Champions League has actually become a league. And the rules are ridiculous. You need a calculator and a cosine button to work out who's playing each other. It's ridiculous. But because they're introducing the league format, they've got to do this ridiculous format where, the rules will change. In fact, we're in between systems. So the rules are constantly changing. There's so many weird loopholes. The FFP and the profit and sustainable, they're ridiculous. No one knows what's happening. Everton will find 2 points worthy. So will Forest. They're pulling fines out of a bag. Here's a number. We'll do that. They don't know what they're doing because what's really happening is the European Super League. And we're in transition. We're in between eras here. So if we want to stop this, we have to change the system. And there's a way of doing it. But let me talk to you. There's six things that you kind of like strategies for monopolization. It's this: control of scarce resources, economies of scale, mergers and acquisitions. That's key. Brand loyalty. Then you've got vertical integration, and then barriers to entry because of that. So let's have a look at what's happening. It's control of scarce resources. So elite clubs monopolize talent and they limit access for smaller teams, and then transfer fees skyrocket. So that makes it harder for anybody to get hold of a decent player. Economies of scale, because of the financial power of this continuous revenue growth. Smaller clubs haven't got the spending power. They just can't do it. They can get lucky and sign a little asset before he increases, but they don't get to keep them. Mergers and acquisitions, this is totally key. What you've got now, and we'll come back to this, is multi-club ownership models. They resemble kind of corporate takeovers, really. Red Bull is an interesting case. And that means that talent pipelines can be controlled across the continent. Then you've got the advertisers I've mentioned briefly. All you see is the winners. All you see is the top teams. All you see is the top players looking prestigious and perfect. That kind of global fan base, it creates that, and that creates more financial dominance. And it means it's harder for new clubs to try to break that, or other clubs to break that elite dominance. This is also key. Mergers, acquisitions, and this one, vertical integration. This is what it's really all about. It's, here you get control of like youth academies, scouting networks, and importantly, commercial deals. And you get full dominance over football's supply chain. That's what's going to happen. And then because of that, the barriers to entry, mid-tier clubs, they just can't get into that Champions League, the Super League structure. There's no way it can happen. So this is what's going to happen. The top teams are going to merge with the commercial partners, which will be US, probably. Yeah, it's all about, we'll come to digital software in a second, in a bit, because it's key. It's going to be US firm. It's going to be Middle Eastern oil, US private equity, and these big European clubs. They merge with the sponsors. They merge with the broadcasters. They create, and UEFA, they create this huge structure. So the European Super League, I mean, how many teams will it be? I don't know. But this is what's going to happen. Let's take Man United, for example. They won't stay Man United. In fact, we could take Newcastle. Newcastle are owned by Saudi Arabia. And Saudi Arabia do not want to be called Newcastle. So once they've done this, once they've taken our clubs into that structure, our clubs will have B team status at first. Newcastle B playing Man United B. Liverpool B playing whoever. No one gives a shit about Liverpool B. Everybody wants to watch Liverpool, who are in the Champions League, in the European Super League. Anyway, eventually what you'll get is this great competition where all the talent pipelines go up. All these clubs are multi-ownership models. So these sort of European Super League clubs will also own loads of other clubs, in a like they do now, like Red Bull do now. And what you'll eventually get is that teams like Everton, when the Premier League becomes a backwater domestic league, the revenue goes down significantly. How are you going to compete? You've got to merge. They'll merge with each other. And so basically the teams all merge with each other and they control the talent pipelines. So, they will say, they need players in their team. They need the best players in the world in there. Super League team. So they need places to trial these players out and compete. So the domestic leagues are still relevant for that. But they will control, like, if you look up all the way down, each club in this Super League structure will own multiple clubs throughout the world. And then you'll get billionaires going, I'm going to set a franchise up. So they will just create their own team, 10 billion on the table, build a couple of stadiums. You want contracts for 4 years. That'll probably be about £1 billion a year then. So in wages, they'll throw 3, 4, 5 billion. It's nothing. It's nothing to these huge corporate behemoths now that have got hundreds of billions, if not trillions, in assets. And they'll just set a team up. And you have all that corporate bullshit about what they represent, And then you've got Middle Eastern teams, Asian teams, you've got South American teams coming in as well, representing those areas. This is how it's going to work. It's the only way it can work. When you follow the monopolization through to its end state, that's what it is. And you think about it, how much global influence can you get by owning Man United, whoever? They'll be even bigger then. It's a great way of controlling public opinion, making people like your brand or you. State control as well, nation states. The reason Qatar are in football is to be visible, because these are authoritarian regimes that own oil. Someone can literally invade them and just authoritarian regimes, when it goes wrong really quick and they die. So the reason they're in football is to be visible on the world stage. So, and they have relationships now with UEFA, with French. So, you can't just invade Qatar now without huge ramifications on a geopolitical stage. So they've made themselves relevant through football, through sports washing. So this is a great way for billionaires to exert more control, and football works for billionaires. It's totally the same as the wider world. It's controlled by US private equity. Look at all the club ownership models. Look at Leeds United. It's about commercialism. It's about a platform springboard into Europe and other markets. This is how it's going to end up. And this normalization process, well, what I've just explained to you, I don't know how far down the line it is. It's really hard to put a time frame on this, but we might be a bit further down than people think. And it's being normalized. This could be 2030s. We are just getting used to the same teams winning all the time. Like you said before, really, all the best players and all the best scouts and all the best coaches, they are going up. And it's been that way. If a manager does well, what's the saying? He deserves a chance at a top club. It's the same everywhere. It's been normalized. This process is well underway, and no one's looking at it and thinking, fuck, And football's governing bodies are going to facilitate this shift, because football's governing bodies work for the billionaires. They work for the oil companies, the oil nation states, and they work for US private equity. And then obviously, like I said, all the distribution stays at the top, and then they feed down. And that's your structure. That's where football's going. It is inevitable under Milton Friedman neoliberal economics. And if you want to stop it, we've got to act now. We've got to save the Premier League, and the only way we can do it is by taking over the Premier League, because it's a system of brown envelopes. I mean, they all they do is wear suits and then do fuck all. That is what they look nice, and they do fuck all. Look at the broadcasting. I said we talk about digital broadcasting. It's key. Now, I was talking about this digital broadcasting service in 2021. I think the clip I saw was from like 2019 or 2020. So the fact that Sky, who are satellite, have got a contract till 2028 is ridiculous. This is the digital age. I mean, Apple are already doing this in the MLS. Look at Amazon. Everybody's saying how great Amazon's coverage was. Everybody. Yeah. It was amazing because they're doing the digital, they're streaming it. And all you've got to do is hire really good pundits, really good commentators, show all the games, bang. Everyone's going, wow. Yeah. This is the new model. It should already be in place. If you sell the Premier League to 188 countries worldwide from a single source, 200 million people already pay upwards of £30. Charge them just £10. That's £24 billion. So right now, the Premier League are in charge of that potential. They are going to sell it to guess who? Who do you think is going to buy? Who do you think will be in charge of the digital broadcasting network?
Do you think go on.
It's a country. Who owns this country right now?
Who owns us?
Yes. Britain is basically a vassal state now.
Okay.
Who owns Britain? Do you have any idea?
I don't. Go on.
It's the Americans.
Okay.
They are going to sell us to the Americans, and the Americans are going to monopolize this digital broadcasting service. This will probably happen in 28, 29, because that's when Sky's current deal is up. At the minute, it's fragmented. So you've got each different company buys the rights. The Premier League just sell the rights and bank checks. They don't do anything. They're useless. And they just take about 3-4 billion a year, slam it into the Premier League. They could be taking upwards of 20-30 billion pounds a year. And what I'm saying in the book is we should own that. Britain has no digital tech infrastructure at all. Our government servers are American. You might remember, in fact, there's a recent example with the nuclear deterrent. We can't do it without the Americans, because guess who owns the software? We have no independence and no sovereignty. We've left the EU and we now belong to the Americans. There's a great book called Vassal State. You should read it. Really revealing. We have no digital tech infrastructure at all. Even the government servers are American. You might remember that Chinese came over with that, was it Hawaii thing they were trying to do with the 5G network?
Yeah.
Remember it? Yeah, the Americans just went, no.
Hawaii, yeah.
The Americans straight away, no. So what did we do? No, we won't have that, sorry. The Americans control everything we do. What we've got to do is get some British sovereignty and take the Americans on in our own backyard by creating a digital platform, a digital streaming service. You don't even need to innovate. You just need to imitate. Take some Silicon Valley experts, take 100 of them, set up Netflix style, Amazon, whatever you want to call it, streaming service over here for the British people. We will pay you £2 billion. It's literally that easy, because this is going to create tens of billions of pounds a year. We should own that structure. Right now, the Premier League are in charge. Who put them in charge? Who voted for them? Nobody. They are self-elected, self-governing, and even self-regulating. These people are criminals. They are not our friends. You look at the VAR situation, useless. VAR on the continent is way better. Automated and they said no, we're not doing that. And I think they're doing it next season because it's been that bad. These people wear suits and do nothing. We've got to take on the Premier League. We've got to. Otherwise, this European Super League structure happens, and that 200 million people I've just been referencing, you'd be lucky if we could take a zero off that. Nobody is going to pay for English football apart from the English and maybe a few Scandinavians and Aussies. I don't know. No one cares, because the European Super League is the highest level of football and everybody watches the highest level.
Yeah.
So we are in big, big trouble because no one's looking at the bigger picture. The stats I just showed you earlier, no one's ever done. Incredible. This is what's happening in football. Oligarchs are taking over and using football to sports wash and to gain even more public influence. There's so much soft power. But get this. This is what I'm saying is this. The only way to get rid of them is to nationalise football. It's really easy to do. And straight away when I say that, people go, state control, no. That's communism. No, I found a way around it. The state won't own football, we will. There's something called a public commons partnership. It's the exact opposite to a PPI, public-private initiative, which Tony Blair did a lot of. For example, the government needs to build a hospital. So what do? They tell a private company to do it. You build the hospital, the state pays nothing. They build it for 30 million. But then what happens? The state pays back 300 million. It's a huge waste of money. Basically, these people are loan sharks. That's what's happening. BlackRock are coming into this country more than ever now. The Labour Party have opened the door to BlackRock, who are buying up houses. These people are loan sharks. What we need to do is build our own British-owned, publicly owned digital streaming platform. And you can use this for social media. You can use this for obviously football streaming, which will make billions, tens of billions a year. And then we also need to do finance. Every time you do a credit card transaction or a debit card transaction, it's all American software. And guess what? We can't tax them. The Americans won't let us. The Americans tax them. All this money is evaporating out of our economy. Our government owns nothing. We are completely asset stripped. We are completely skinned. We could have our own digital broadcasting service. It'd be Britain's Hollywood. Combined, you look at the music industry now, it's gone to shit. Why don't we do music through this streaming platform? Why don't we do comedy through this streaming platform? Every club would have its own channel. You've got comedians and bands associated with it. We can sell the best of British culture to the world directly. No billionaires. We would make an absolute fortune. When you go on social media, it's not trying to hack your mind. It's not trying to influence you. All the algorithms are transparently programmed. It's a genius idea. And I am banging my head against a wall because the book's been out 3 months. And yeah, we've done okay with book sales. We're into 4 figures, which isn't bad for a book, apparently. But, you know, I wrote this to try and shift the political landscape of English football completely and actually shift the political landscape of the wider system. So we need to sell 100,000 minimum, you know, and I'm going to keep on this campaign because it's important. And everything I'm saying is logical and rational. And you can, like going back to nationalising football, you can do it really easily. Every football club combined is less than track and trace. It's really cheap economically. It's about 25 to 30 billion. That's the combined total of our clubs. When you have, the Elizabeth line got on it on Friday, did a book launch in London. It was great. People want this. You know, I'm going down to Tottenham. I'm going down to all these clubs who want Levy out. I went and marched with 1958. So I stood with Man United 2 weeks ago. No fan's ever done that. And this is what I'm trying to do. Fans have got to start standing with each other. Glazers out, Ashley out, Levy out. It's all the same fight. We are going to get taken over by Red Bull, probably, because this is how this commercial thing works. Our American owners don't give 2 fucks about Leeds United. None of them do. You know, you're kidding yourself. They're going to sell us to Red Bull. Why have Red Bull invested 10 million? You know, it's a bit iffy. We might end up in that European Super League thing through Red Bull. But then we won't be called Red Bull Leeds. We'll be called Red Bull. You know, Leeds will just be, they will own Leeds, but Leeds will be a feeder team for Red Bull. You know, this is how it's going to work in our backwater domestic league that no one really watches. This is how it's working. And we've got to act now. We can take these people on. You know, we can take them on. And if we build a movement, you've got to threaten the Premier League power base. You've got to threaten them. Because if they don't feel threatened, they just keep going as they're going. If you can threaten them and go, we can do English football without you. We know with this digital tech platform, we're going to build it. We're going to build it for Britain. You know, Premier League wages are what, 4 billion? Less than that. 24 billion pounds. And that's a low estimation. In the big games, you've got 500 to 600 million people watching Spurs, Arsenal, stuff like that. That's our market. Charge each of them a £5. It's ridiculous amounts of money. You know, we could have that. Premier League wages are nothing compared to what's going to come in through a small subscription package going out to hundreds of millions of people. We can.
How do in principle, I get it all, Micky, but how do we start that?
We start by organising in our fan groups. Actually, when you think about it, the network to establish a political movement is already there. Every single club and all the cross connections we have between the clubs and this culture we've got, that is the network. What you've got to do is politicize it. Once you politicize it, we win. We've already won. You cannot ignore us. What will happen is this. Once the movement starts growing, more people look at this and go, he's right. This is a great idea. You know, and take on the Premier League. These price hikes have been beautiful for me. I want this. And because it angers people. You've got to make people angry with it. Football fans are so passive. We've taken everything lying down. Everything. And, you know, these price hikes are playing into my hands because I'm going there and saying, we can win. We can, you know, this is not a little change that's needed. It's massive, macro, big change. You change the economic philosophy. That's what you do. At the minute, the economic philosophy is going European Super League. But once we challenge them, this is what's going to happen. They'll start getting worried. And they'll go, okay, they'll make it up every season. Every ticket for the Premier League is £20. That's it. They'll start doing things like that. You get what you want if you threaten their power structure. We've got to think big. And what I've just done there is really ambitious. Britain used to take on the world, and now the world has taken us on in our own backyard. And there's a way we can reverse it. And we can own it in a public commons partnership. So what's going to happen is this. You have this huge digital broadcasting platform. You have a public gambling company. What a good idea. Why we, stop advertising any gambling in football for a start. Just have our own gambling company that we all put into. You've got billions of pounds there coming straight in. A brewery system we own, shirt manufacturing. Take all that. You don't need Nike, you don't need Adidas. We can do it ourselves. You can take the Nike, you can take their designers if you want, but we can design our own shirts, and then we've also got it's soft power, it's hard power. You can turn around to countries in Asia and say, "Do you want 5 factories?" We've got to do some of it offshore to keep costs down. We own everything. This huge public commons partnership, it basically means the state owns a tiny fraction, and paying members, the Common Association, will own, like say, 90%. So we own it. We have to write a written constitution to manage football, because this is a group of 5-10 million people who will own this superstructure. It'll be one of the biggest corporations in the UK. So what does that mean? It means we can lobby our own government. At the minute, lobbying goes ahead at the corporations, US ones mainly. So it gives us strategic power in our own domestic political landscape. And it's pretty easy to do. You can do it in one single act of parliament. And get this, Joe, Brexit. Inside the EU, this isn't possible, because the club owners would appeal to the European courts. And because of the EU liberalisation laws, they would have a good case. Now we're outside the EU, we have the sovereignty to just take the clubs. You can nationalise businesses, you can nationalise property. It happens all the time. Property gets nationalised a lot. Look at HS2, bang. If your house is in the way, you get given market value for your house, slightly above, and you get asked to move. That's what the European Court of Human Rights, which we must adhere to, it's an international treaty, not an EU treaty. That just says, yeah, of course you can nationalise these businesses, but you've got to do it legally. You've got to do it in the public interest. And when it's done, you've got to financially compensate at top-end market value. So we'd be looking at 30 billion, goodbye, fuck off. It's that simple. There's nothing they can do. Nothing. We can just take it, because we form a political movement and we say what we can do. And I've even looked into how it will happen. You could do government bonds against the to raise the money to do this, against future broadcasting rights. This is going to bring in so much money. 200 million people already pay. Far more. Loads of people hack it. Who isn't hacking like Premier League football, but from a single digital source? It's harder to hack. Who hacks Netflix? Who hacks Amazon? So you'd have more than a few 100 million people. We would be completely minted. Each club will be owned by its members, and we should give away 10% of our clubs to foreigners. Draw them in. £1 a month they pay. Man United have got 650 million fans. If 500 paid £1 a month, 6 billion a year. That's just one club. We own this superstructure. We give away ownership rights to foreigners, bring them in. They'd have their own area of the ground, regular email correspondence. They'd have all sorts of things they could vote on. They could influence the club in different ways. Not as much as us full members, of course. But this is how you do it. You increase the Premier League's brand globally. Everything I've talked about is completely rational. It makes so much sense. The only problem is it's such a big shift in perspective that it's blowing people's minds.
Yeah, it's blown mine.
They blown mine. See it happening. It's not realistic. So what we've got to do is normalize. Normalize. Speak about it. Obviously, buy the book. I'm on with the second book, actually. It's hard because I'm trying to promote the first, and I'm, still teaching, still gigging, still got my business, really funny comedy. Please come and check the website out and come to my gigs in Leeds and around Yorkshire. We need the money and moving house. But
does the regulator help any of this? Does the regulator help any of this at all? Because that's all of us asked.
The regulator? Regulators don't regulate, mate. It's a sham. The whole thing is a sham. We've got a water regulator, Joe. How's that gone? The whole thing is a sham. It's a complete facade. The Premier League don't want the government involved. Do you know why? Because they want all the power for themselves, and they go straight to the government don't give a fuck. They're owned by Americans anyway. They're lobbied by Americans. They're lobbied by the oil companies. They're lobbied by Israel. They do whatever. They do the bidding of the people that put them into power. They don't work for us. The Conservatives don't work for us. Do you think the Labour Party work for us? We've got to. We can win here. In the wider economy, it's really difficult to take these people on. In football, we can ring fence the sector, kick them out, and we can create this incredible new kind of like across several sectors, this incredible new superstructure that we own. This is based on a manufacturing company, a huge manufacturer. It's across different services in the Basque region of Spain. Mondragon. It's one of the biggest kind of companies in Spain. It's huge, and it goes across different sectors. In this company, like CEOs are only paid 5 times the wages of factory workers. So it's this really kind of like, it's a huge in the Basque region in Spain. It's the 7th largest company in Spain. And it's a similar kind of, this is how it would work. It's a similar process to that. I don't know, I've talked for nearly an hour because when I go on, I go off, mate. But
yeah, I can see.
Because I'm passionate about this, and I'm telling you now, I'm right about everything. This is that City will get away with it to some extent. They've got to keep them close. And Leeds United, if they go up, will get somewhere around 25 points next season. If we stay in the Championship, we're competing with 3 teams that are going to get 90 plus. So it's going to be hard. But the rule of 2 out of 3 is going to go out because the playoffs is such a lottery. But we never do well in the playoffs, do we? If we finish third this season, we are staying in the Championship. And, it's going to be we've got the highest, I think it's the 2nd highest ever wage bill in the Championship. And we've got the most successful Championship manager ever. So if we don't go up, it's a big failure, really. Leicester's wage bill last season was ridiculous. I mean, and just to go back to us next season, you think about how much better Ipswich were than us. They were better. And then they've strengthened with 100 million and they've got 17 points. That's where we are next season. So enjoy this season because it ain't going to last. And as far as Red Bull Leeds goes, this is I have no inside knowledge, but there's a reason they've put 10 million in. They'll start, buying shares. You know how it works. They've got 10%, 20, and eventually the people, just like the previous owner, they walk away into the sunset with God knows how many tens of millions of pounds. They buy low, sell high. That's how it works. Radrizzani walked away. I think he bought us for less than 50 million. Yeah, he invested in the club and did quite well, but God knows how much he sold it for. He made a fucking lot of money. It's not rocket science. They're going to sell to Red Bull because they're here because they want money. They want power. They want influence. And owning Leeds is good for that. And this Parag chairman guy, but money talks at the end of the day. Red Bull are going to put a massive offer in, and then the Premier League work for the likes of Red Bull. The fit and proper person's test. It's a joke. Yeah. The whole thing is a sham, mate.
You've certainly set the cat amongst the pigeons as well. Yeah. How's it? Because obviously, I bet you've had to deal with Mickey. There's some that'll go, nah, he's lost it. He's this. He's gone way over. How have you dealt with that? Like, what is your response to
that? Cynicism is really hard to cut through. Yeah. But actually, on a psychological level, the way you deal with it is you can't at the minute. You've just got to remain. I'm trying to learn patience. Of course. This is why partly, Joe, why I wanted to come on to put my neck on the line and say, look, this is what's going to happen next season. The Premier League, you expect to see 2 teams in the 90s, and it might be 3. It might be 3. Expect to see the mean average of the bottom 3, which Leeds will hopefully be in, to be around 24, 25 points. And, I can make predictions. The Championship is going to be 3 teams, the 3 teams that come down. They should be making, they know it's happening. They know they're getting relegated. They should be making, plans now. Keep your wage bill high. It's that simple. It's that easy. Leicester will bounce straight back up, probably win it. They're the biggest commercially. Southampton, it's a bit shaky. Ipswich could do a Luton. You never know. And it depends. Are they going to keep Kieran McKenna? Because he's great. And I think if Kieran McKenna can be given a decent wage bill in the Championship, you're looking at Ipswich top 2. Yeah. So, you know, on 95, I mean, you probably expect Leicester to get into the 100 mark. It's interesting to compare the Premier League to the Championship. But we have got, is it 80 points? We've got 80 points.
Yeah, 80 points.
And how many games we played? 38.
Yeah.
So this is a Premier League season. And think about our dominance. We've been really dominant. We've got 80 points. First decade of the Premier League. Just to go into like how domineering these Premier League winners are. You know, 91 is the average. In the previous 10 years. I think actually in the last 3 years, it's probably gone down slightly. But some seasons buck the trend, you know? But you just think about how domineering these teams are now.
Of course. And, you know, there's points like right at the start, like when you're talking through and it makes sense to me, you know, with the numbers where you're talking about how the points has gone up year on year, the gap's getting bigger. There'll be some that flirt with the top 4 or 5, but then, you know, they get absolutely pilfered. And yeah, exactly. And then we go again. And we, again, last season, 3 teams, 90 points, and then you're looking at it, actually, this is the new norm. You know what I mean? Yes. I was talking to Benjamin Bloom about it the other day, and he went, we're actually probably looking at the new norm because Leeds and Sunderland were the only 2 teams, and now it looks like every season you might get 90-plus points from 2 or 3 or more. So it is changing, and the numbers back that up. I won't lie, you lost me when you were talking about... You lost me when you were talking about the digitalized and all the money and that. I'm going, what's going on? But, you know.
I know. It's a lot of information. I know that I'm saying it's a lot of information. It's too much for people to cope with. I'm going to have to kind of like, I'm learning how to explain this. I need to, is that LUFC, Lewis?
It is, mate, yeah.
Hey up, mate. How are you doing? Do you know what? Benjamin Bloom, someone I need to get in contact with because he's pretty influential.
I can.
You know, I've contacted these people, but it's hard at the minute for me because I'm quite well known in Leeds, but outside Leeds, not really. You know, some people recognise me from Britain's Got Talent, but I've got no influence. I've had a really good publishing deal, and the book is very, very well written. It's also on Audible as well. It's not me that said it. It's really hard to read a book. I found I couldn't do it. So they got a voice actor. He's absolutely amazing. So you can listen to this book. It's about 6 hours on Audible. It's a massive gear shift, you know, but it explains everything in more detail and how you can run English football as a public service. It's about collective ownership and it's about protecting the past. It's about taking the best elements of the past, you know, the egalitarian regulation of the Victorians. The book explains the political process of English football, how it changed. But, you know, I won't explain it now because we've already had too much influence, too much already. And people are tired. I know it's exhausting. I've got to face this and I've got to do it in presentations. I did a book presentation in London. We had 50 people down, which I was really pleased with because at the minute, everything's organic. There's no influencers. There's no celebrities and there's no journalists spreading this. It's just one guy on a podcast talking to people and trying to hook them in and engage them and turn them on, I suppose. So I've got another one. If anyone's listening and knows anyone in London or is in London, I've got a book launch at the Volley Pub in Hackney on the 4th of April. So I'm in chatting with Spurs fans there. I'm trying to get on those podcasts, West Ham, and I'm off on Arsenal TV as well the day before. So I'm just trying to speak to the Gooners, and what we've got to do is think across the clubs and begin to build club alliances. Now, at the minute, and this is already happening, by the way, the clubs are signing together. The Spirit of Shankly at Liverpool, the most organised fan group. They're really organised. Gareth Edwards, he's got the book. He's not read it yet. It's hard to get people to read a book, Joe.
Of course, yeah. No,
because everyone's busy and reading levels have plummeted. So
I can't watch. Do you know I can't watch a film anymore without having to pause it about 4 times to check my phone? And
it's horrible, isn't it?
For nothing. And I'll go.
Yeah.
What am I doing? I've changed because I used to read when I was younger, and now I couldn't think of no worse.
Well,
It's mad.
It's good for your mental health, actually. If you, I've come in here to sell the book, but also try and make people understand what's happening. And when Red Bull come in, I'm hoping we'll have some kind of Leeds United resistance to it, so we can get that going and go. I mean, I'm going to go and stand with 1958 again. The FC United are playing on Saturday, but I'm gigging in Manchester on the evening, so it kind of makes sense. I'm going to go over there and stand with them again. And we've got to start joining each other's protests. And I think that's the best way to begin. You've got to start with some early radicals. It starts with a small team of people, and you build. And we have a positive
maybe
message.
In years to come, right? There'll be a statue of Micky P Kerr like he started the revolution. Viva la revolution!
It needs to get taken out of my hands because I'm pretty useless at PR, and yeah, I really am. And the more that and if it's all in my hands, they'll just take me out, mate. They'll just put a bullet through my head. I'm taking hundreds of billions of pounds out of the pockets of billionaires here. So yeah, I'm sure that'll probably get taken out, but. The movement will grow, and the idea is brilliant. I stand by it. It makes sense. I'm the only one looking down the timeline, and no one's even looking in the rearview mirror. We don't even know what's happened to football. Everyone's looking. The future just is a white sheet of God knows what. So I feel like I'm the only person who's zoning out and going, "What is really happening?" Let's apply some economic theory to this. And when you do that, the obvious monopolization process is already happening. We're already well down the line. So before this car crash happens, let's act. And anybody who's listening, who's up for getting in touch with me and saying, I'd like to join your revolution, that'd be great. I've got some people who have, we are chatting about, we're going to get a website. What do we call the movement? There's all these things in the branding. We need to get it right and we don't want to rush. But at the minute, it's a hard slog. But I see this, Joe, I'm going till 2029 here. So 4 or 5. I started this in 2021 with an elevator pitch and a dream. I've got this far. I've got a published book. I've worked with some great people, academic experts, political experts, gambling experts as well. There's a bit about gambling and how we can form our own gambling company. There's loads of knowledge in that book. It's very well written. 4 copy editors. I hired my own editor before I got the publishing deal. So I've come a long way, but now the book's done, the real journey begins of, you finish one mountain and then you're at the foot of an even bigger one. It's getting the word out there. And I honestly believe that I had quite a few journalists come up to me on, and saying, listen, this is really interesting. And so hopefully the football journalists hold a lot of power, hold a lot of sway. This is a really interconnected network. And thanks, by the way, for everything you've done to help and put me in contact with people like Dan Potts at Arsenal, because through Dan, I've got in with Arsenal TV, and I appreciate it, mate. This footballing podcast network is what I'm using, and I intend to keep using it.
I think I've said for a while that football fan media is the way it's going, because that's where I get all my football content from now, is from the fans, not someone says. So I think it's probably the right way to go, Mickey. And I've learned something tonight.
It's about us. I'm speaking 100%. Directly to fans, and the more I go on, and hopefully, so is it the rule of 3? When you hear something 3 times, you eventually buy into it. That's what I hear. But I'm trying to work out how to sell this. But I'm flying by the seat of my pants, if I'm honest with you, Joe, because I don't know how to lead a revolution. I'm just going to keep going. That's the only thing I know. No,
that's all you can.
That's the only thing you can do, mate.
To finish, though, Mickey, right? I've put the link to your book in the chat. People go check out. Yeah, no, not a problem. To finish on a lighter note, are Leeds United getting promoted?
I think so. Yeah. But, the way it's going and the way that we always kind of cup at the end, and the way that Burnley just aren't conceding and now they're scoring goals again.
Exactly. Yeah.
Sheffield United are above us because they've had a 2-point deduction.
Yeah.
So they have been a better team.
They've won more games
it feels like a coin flip, but I think we've got a 2 in 3 chance, which, if I was going to bet on it, I'd say yes.
Yes, good. That's good. Listen, folks, an hour and 10 minutes. Great. Listen, I really enjoyed that. I learned something. I was lost at bits, but that's fine as well, right? You can't get it all in a wanna. But thanks for everyone that's watched. And if you're watching on playback, then big up to you all. Make sure you go check out Micky P Kerr's stuff, his business, his book, everything. He's a funny guy and a really nice guy as well.
Thanks, mate. I really appreciate it. And it's called Football: The People's Shame: How to Revolutionise the National Sport. So, get it on Amazon, believe it or not. We're kicking out the billionaires, but
get it on Amazon, yeah. The link is there as well again in the comments, folks. And we shall see you in a bit. So thanks, everyone. And we'll exit.